kind of go back to your start, to your beginnings, and what made you decide to become an attorney? And tell us about your law school experience.
Graduated from UNC undergrad in 1978, and moved back to Wilson, where I was from, and got a job in road construction in asphalt. And I did that for a few months, and then I was an electrician's helper. And it occurred to me that I wanted to get in some other field of work. Asphalt was pretty tough work, so I took the LSAT and decided I'd go to law school. So I was out 1 year between undergrad and law school. My uncle, John Webb, was, at that time, I think he was a Superior Court judge, and I was very close to him. He's deceased now. He went on to be on the Court of Appeals and the North Carolina Supreme Court. So he was sort of my role model in that respect. I was also distantly related to Robert McMillan, and he was another of my mentors. So they sort of inspired me to go to law school. So I went to UNC, Chapel Hill Law School. It took me a little while to get my bearings, figure all that out over there, but eventually I did. And I had a good experience in law school. After my first year there, I got married to my high school sweetheart. We've now been married 44 years. It's been a great thing. I was going to say asset to me, but that doesn't do her justice. But we were in the same first grade class in Wilson, so it's very hard for me to pull anything over her eyes. Take my word, she can see right through anything. But we have a great marriage, and it's been such a blessing to me. It's helped me in my career as well. So now that's sort of the basis of what makes me tick. So that's how I got started in the law business. And then when I got out of law school, needed to get a job because at that point we had a little girl. While we were in law school, my daughter was born, and so needed to get a job, and worked as a volunteer at the Wake County DA's office. Would come over here, and he had told me that if I passed the bar, that I'd have a job. So fortunately, I passed the bar, and so I started working there at the Wake County DA's office. So that's kind of was the start of my career in 1982.
So, starting in 1982 in Wake County, take us on your career path from there.
Well, I stayed there about 3 years, and it was a very good experience there, had a good staff. And back then, they were just, there wasn't a whole lot of training involved. It was sort of on-the-job training, so to speak. So they put you in a courtroom, district courtroom, right off the bat. Have your own courtrooms, prosecuting misdemeanor cases. And so I learned a lot there and met a lot of lawyers. Back then, now it's just people do criminal work or they do civil work or they do real estate or they do one thing. Back then, there's people, any kind of lawyer might show up in district court and superior court for that matter, and handle cases, just kind of whatever came in the door, so to speak. So I got to meet a lot of lawyers when I was working in the DA's office. And they also, I think 5 weeks in the DA's office, I was in superior court trying jury trials. They moved you along really fast back then. Now, they were misdemeanor appeals from at first, but even after a year, they moved you up from district court to superior court, and you were trying felony cases. So you get a lot of experience real fast in the DA's office, where you did back then, because people sort of moved on after about 3 years. Either they ran for judge or They went into private practice. They didn't stay quite as long, I think, as they do now. There were a few career people, but not that many. So yeah, I was there, and then I started looking around. I said, well, after about 3 years, it's time to make a decision about what you need to do. So I thought I'd go into private practice, and started talking to some lawyers and some law firms about that. And I mentioned that to Robert McMillan one day, and he said, well, come work with me if you want to. And that's all I needed to hear. And I said, made sure he was serious. And I asked him, when I start? He said, you start in 2 weeks. Meet me in front of the First Federal Building at 8 o'clock. So that's what I did. Went home, told Sally I was going to work for Robert McMillan, and she asked me, well, how much you going to get paid? I said, I don't know. We didn't discuss that. She said, where's your office? I said, I don't know. We didn't discuss it. He said, meet me in front of the First Federal Building, 8 o'clock in 2 weeks. So that's what I did. I got there and found out where the office was. We actually didn't, as it turned out, he didn't have a separate office for me, but he shared his office with me. And so I got a lot of, at first, eventually, after about 6 months, I got my own office. But he let me sit in with him when he talked to clients, and that was an invaluable experience for me because Robert at that time had the biggest practice so far as criminal defense law in Wade County. And so he just had a constant stream of people coming in, talking to him, and I got to see how he interacted with clients and how he listened to clients, and that proved to be very beneficial to me. I eventually moved away from, I did do criminal defense law for a good number of years with him, but eventually I started getting into civil cases, litigation, and he had so many people that he had those cases too that he just referred out, so he would just refer those to me, and then I eventually, I started developing my own practice, and other lawyers would send me cases, and so that's kind of how I got started. And then his brother Archie was there at that time as well. Archie was a great, like Robert, he was a World War II veteran, but Archie was a captain in the Marines and some of the really tough fighting in World War II, and he was sort of a war hero, and I really looked up to Archie as well. But he was just a great person, and just like Robert. And Archie died not too long after I came with Robert. But we merged with Duncan, Robert's son, Duncan McMillan, and Steve Smith, Jim Kimsey, and bought a building and moved into the building, renovated the building, and down on Martin Street in Raleigh, and we practiced there. And Catherine Jean joined us later. She went on to work at the State Bar for many years, and Martha Walston was there was there also for a period of time. So we just had a good group of people down there, and I ended up working with Robert for about 26 years, and by that time he had slowed down considerably. But I had some opportunity to go work with David Kirby, who was a good friend of mine from Wilson growing up, although he's 5 years older than I am. And he was working with Mark Holt at that time, along with Bill Bystrinsky and Isaac Thorpe. And so I went over with them. And by that time, Jim Kimsey had moved back to the mountains. He was from Brevard originally. He moved back. So I went over and worked with David Kirby and his firm for about 6 years. And then after that, I moved to a firm, and David's a great lawyer. All the lawyers over there are really good folks too. So after that, I moved where I am now, which is it's called Miller, Monroe, and Plyler. Miller and Monroe already had a firm, and they were kind enough to take me in with them. Monroe is my son-in-law, married to my daughter. His name's Jeff Monroe, and we do all kinds of any kind of civil lawsuit. It can be a personal injury, wrongful death, can be business litigation, do pretty much everything, condemnation work, do a lot of civil practice there. So, and all the folks there, I think there are 8 lawyers now. All of them are younger than I am, and they are just very great, good people and good lawyers. So, I've been blessed in my legal career that all of the lawyers that I've worked with in the firms that I've been with, I've just been lucky. Have been really good people and good lawyers, and I've learned a lot from all of them. So, and now I'm still, if I'm in town, I go to office every day and I work, but I will confess that I'm not keeping the hours I once did. I mean, I've been doing it now 42 years, so, and I don't have the necessity to work that much. So I'm just kind of enjoying what I do now and don't really have the pressure of that has been the case in the past to crank it out, so to speak. So it's I've been lucky. I'm in a real good place right now. I enjoy the people I work with. I enjoy the clients. And knock on wood, my health's been good, and I've got 5 grandchildren that all live in Raleigh, and so I'm just having a good place right now in my life.
I want to go back because of a few things that stood out to me as you took us through your career. Can you talk to us about the importance of that mentor-mentee relationship? And it really sounds like Robert McMillan was that for you. Can you speak to that mentor relationship and the importance of it in the profession?
Well, Robert, talk about lucky. I have to say I'm probably the luckiest lawyer in Wake County. Just because Robert, there's really nobody else like Robert. He just, Robert, he was, I think he wrote the professional creed of Wake County, sort of document that we've adopted for professionalism. And it's kind of ironic because he's not a big proponent of the ethical rules. I remember occasionally I would go ask him about a code of professional responsibility and whether I could do such and such in accordance with the rules of professional responsibility or whether it be a violation. And he told me a couple of times, he said, William, he said, if you've got to go look it up in a book to determine whether you can do it or not, he said, don't do it. He said, if there's any question, if it's a close call about whether, you got a conflict of interest or whether, you should handle the matter in a certain way, he said, you go on the side that's there's no question, but that you preserve your integrity, your ethics, and don't even worry about the rule. Just do what you know is the right thing to do. So, that was sort of his philosophy about everything, and certainly you have to pass on some cases. That way, you may not make as much money in the short term, but I think that served me well, following his or attempting to follow his guidance on matters like that. And he was a hard worker too. He taught me, you've got to put in the time to prepare for your cases to, if you're going to represent your clients like they're entitled to be represented.
And do you think that those lessons you learned as a mentee, did you pass them on to your mentees as you went on in your career and you became the mentor? Tell us about that.
Well, I don't know about all that, but I mean, I'll try to if I'm asked by the younger. Like I say, the people I'm with now are all younger. They're well, actually, Paul is one. Paul Flick is closer to my. He's not as old as I am, but he's closer. The rest of them are in their 40s and younger. But I mean, yeah, they will ask my opinion on matters sometime, and I try to give them my 2 cents. So hopefully some of that rubs off a little bit. All the people I'm working with are very impressive and very ethical and work hard. It's unfortunately the law business is one that it takes a lot of time to prepare, and there are no shortcuts. So you've got to put in the time to think about, what you want to do. And the lawyers that I'm with now are real good about talking amongst each other. We confer and we have conferences and get other people's input on how to proceed with particular cases, and that serves everybody well. And to the extent that I can throw in my opinion, hopefully some of that rubs off. I don't know.
So you mentioned that kind of Robert McMillan's thought when it came to ethical situations that if you have to look it up, don't do it. What's another ethical dilemma that you ran across at one point in your career that you could share?
Wow. I'm trying to think if I don't remember being placed in a position where I've got to go this way or that way, and what do I do? I'm sure there have been cases where clients have, where I've had to inform clients that we can't go down a particular road with testimony, knowing that, or having a strong belief that might not be truthful. It brings to mind, this is a joke, okay, but it's true. One of my partners had a client one time in a criminal case, and the client told, they were getting ready to go to court, and the client told, and I'll just tell you, this is Steve Smith, one of my former client partners, who's a really good lawyer, very ethical. He was meeting with a client in a criminal case, and the man, I can't remember what the crime was, but the man had a story that he wanted to tell. He said, well, I'm going to tell him that I wasn't there, or I was doing something else. And anyway, and Steve said, he said, you're not going to be allowed to say that. I'm not going to put you on a witness stand if you're going to testify that. And the guy said, why not? And Steve said, well, to put it frankly, he said, that's a lie. He said, I can't put you up there. The guy looked at him and said, lawyer, he said, if I'm going to stay out of prison, somebody's going to have to do some lying. So anyway, he did not testify. Okay, he did not testify. But there are cases sometimes when you got people that may not want to tell the whole truth, and you just got to tell them that ain't going to work. We're going to have to do some other way. We're going to have to take some other approach, or you're not going to say anything. You sit there and be silent or whatever. But but I can't think of any problems that I've had. But I'm sure there have been. I just can't remember.
Well, and that kind of leads me to what do you consider to be the important things for attorneys to remember in that client-attorney relationship? Well,
a lot of lawyers, well, I won't say a lot. Some lawyers don't recognize that the most important relationship is that attorney-client relationship. And, sure, you got to have a good relationship with the court, with the judge. You got to have a good relationship with the other lawyers. You got to have a good relationship with the witnesses, the jurors, or whoever may be involved in a particular case. But the key relationship is with the client. And the most important thing, I think, is to establish a trust relationship with the client. And that starts early by listening to the client. And that's one thing Robert impressed upon me, listening to the client. Listening to the client. Don't tell the client what's going to happen or what we need to do and all that too early. You got to listen to the client and see what they're thinking and what the facts are if you can get them from the client. But once, and you know, the lawyer is always busy. He or she's got cases going on, and you know, say, if you're thinking something needs to be done with this case, I need to schedule this deposition, or I need to do this, but something's going on, you're too busy, or the paralegal's too busy, whatever. You know, number one, you got to do it. If you got the burden of proof, you got to push the case. Now, if you're defending the case, you don't care. The case delayed is a case won as far as you're defending, whether it be a criminal or a civil case. You don't want to push the case. But if you got the burden of proof, you're either the prosecutor or you're the plaintiff in a civil case, you got to push the case along. And you want to keep the client informed everything you do. You know, we're scheduling this, you tell the client, you call them on the phone. Call on the phone is always better than email, better than text. Call them on the phone. You got to establish that relationship, that personal relationship. And then the idea is that over a period of months, maybe even years, the client, there's a trust relationship there, so that when the time comes and you do have to have that serious relationship about, we're not going to do this because, you know, you can't, you know, we can't go down this road. We're going to lose the case this way, or you're going to get in trouble with the court this way. They'll follow your advice. But if you've got to establish that case, so you always want to be calling the client to tell them what's going on instead of the client calling you. Because once the client's calling you, the client's worried that, hey, what's going on in my case? I hadn't heard anything from my lawyer. They call you, and then you tell them what's going on. That's not ideal. You want to be calling the client and telling them what's going on. And then they're saying, hey, this lawyer's working on my case. You know, he cares about my case. And it eliminates a lot of problems and establishes that trust relationship.
So a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. So we talked about client relationships. Talk to me about the stress management. I mean, it's a demanding career and demanding profession, and for 40 years, how do we manage that?
Right. Well, it's not easy, and my wife would tell you it's probably not easy. It's just I would like to say there's a way to avoid it, but it's going to be a certain amount of stress depending on what area you're in. I've always been in litigation, so there's always something that you need to do that, you know, that to be done, and you're concerned that you're not going to have enough time to do it. So it just means that it makes sense in one sense that, you know, the more you work, the less stress you feel because you're better prepared, and not being prepared, I think, is what creates the stress. That said, you can't work all the time, and what I've always done and tried to do is to get exercise. I've only recently not been a member of the Y, but in most of my years, I would just go to the Y. If not every day, then I'd go there about 5 times a week and do something, play basketball, do the weights, do different things to stay active, and play a lot of tennis. Now I'm playing tennis and golf, and go to the fitness rooms and just try to get a lot of exercise. Also, you know, you also want to spend time with your family as well. And, you know, nowadays, and when I was coming along, you know, following my kids around playing sports, That can be pretty stressful too. I'm sure you found out. Watching your kids play, you feel like that's more stressful than just going to work sometimes if they're in competitive events. But that's sort of what I've done. And, of course, you want to read, spend time to read every day. Leisure reading, not the law business. Of course, you're reading all day when you're working in the law, in the field of law. But, stress, I would say exercise and trying to make time for your family is the way to relieve stress. I wish I had done a better job of that over the last 40 years. I'm doing a very good job of it now. And fortunately, my law partners understand. Well, I've told them that I'm going to come and go as I please now, and they're fine with that. Everything works fine. So, I'm kind of now on the backside of it. I survived all that, and I'm just in a good place now. But how to manage it, exercise, family, that's what I would recommend.
And along your 30 years here, how has the legal landscape of Wake County changed? What do you see?
Yeah.
Probably a lot.
Well, I've been here 42 years, but there are more lawyers, of course. I think it's probably harder to know as great a percentage of the bar as I did when I started out. I feel like I said, when I started off at a DA's office, I met a lot of lawyers, not just the criminal people that did criminal work on the other side, but and a lot of judges. So that was good. And also, I always tried to get out and do things with the bar, the Wake County Bar Association, the social events, the basketball league, the tennis tournament, the golf tournament, and just doing a lot of those things. You just meet a lot of people. I think those opportunities are still present today. Unfortunately, there's probably a lot of lawyers that don't avail themselves of those opportunities, either because they don't need to in their job. They aren't concerned about making contact, so to speak, from a business standpoint. And for whatever reason, I think some people just sort of get into their little niche and stay there. But I think with the technology and it has had some influence on that. But for the most part, I think the people that I see at the bar events, those are the ones that get out. So I can't really address it, how all that's changed. Certainly the practice of law has changed from just being able to do research so much faster. I mean, used to, when you'd have a case, and the law was a little unclear, you'd have to go. I would always go to the Supreme Court library and do research and stay up there for days at a time, sometimes trying to find the right case and all that. Whereas now you can just put that in Westlaw or Lexis and pull up a case in 5 minutes. It might take me 2 days to find, in the past when I was starting out. So it's a lot more efficient in that respect, and a lot more time saved in legal research. You could also, you'd be really worried about whether your pleadings were right, in a lawsuit. And I mean, you still are, but, you couldn't never figure out a go-by in a particular claim that you'd have and all. Now you can get a lot of different cases. You can pull up the records on appeal online from appellate cases. They may have had similar lawsuits filed and discovery and all of that. So all of that saves a tremendous amount of time. So the practice of law has changed a lot for the better, because a lot of that was wasted time when you're up there looking for cases. I mean, you learn a lot because you're reading other cases that don't particularly apply to your case, but it's very time consuming. So I'd say it's a lot more efficient these days in the law business. And in Wake County, we've got, in my view, the best bar in the state. Of course, it's the biggest bar to most lawyers, but we've always had a sort of a spirit of congeniality, helping other lawyers out, not being, a jerk during the course of a case, not sending bad emails, accusing people of being, unethical or whatever somebody might do. Wake County lawyers, if they get an email like that from somebody from out of the county or something, they just ignore it and just do the right thing regardless of whatever anybody else is saying. So I think we've got a professionalism here that doesn't necessarily translate across the state, although I'm sure there are a lot of good bars out there, but we got the best.
And where do you see the future of the profession in Wake County?
Well, I think Wake County will always be a good place to practice law. I mean, we've just got so much, first off, the state government here, all the appellate courts, all the administrative law that takes place here, all the utilities commission, all sorts of agencies based here. So we've got an advantage over other bars because we've got a core group of lawyers that deal with governmental matters. But I think the future is good because Wake County is such a great place to live. We're sort of bucking the trends of some other areas in North Carolina that are having problems with their schools and things like that. And all of that, I think, brings a higher quality of lawyer here, that it's just a great place to live. And I think the economy is going to continue to do well here, irrespective of what might happen in the rest of the state. So that bodes well for a lot of business for lawyers and a lot of opportunities for lawyers to be involved in all these tech companies that are coming here. Is in all other sorts of businesses. So I would say the future for Wake County is really good for the law business.
And what would you tell those new attorneys starting out? These attorneys, we just had 80 sworn in, all credit. What do you tell those new Wake County lawyers? What is your best advice?
Well, I mean, just a big picture stuff. I mean, I really would say is work hard and try to get out and meet other lawyers because, I mean, lawyers are, are really nice people, good people. They're not just eggheads or whatever, not just good lawyers, they're also good people. And so I think meeting the other lawyers on a social basis is also good for your client development and your business development. But my advice would be work hard, but also make time for your family. And I've noticed the younger lawyers that I work with, they do a much better job than the lawyers of my generation of making time for their family, for their children, and for making sure that things are right on the home front, so to speak. Although I hope I did a decent job of that myself, but I do know that the tendency of my generation was just to work all the time. And if I had to do over again, ideally, I'm not sure if I could pull this off, but I would have liked to maybe work not quite as much on the weekends and that sort of thing. So my advice would be, to the extent that you can, try to structure your life, focusing on not only your work but also your family as much as you can.
Is there anything else you want to add? You've done a great job. I hope I've made it painless.
No, I was going to tell one story about, I saw on that list. I'll just tell you. My legal career peaked 1 week out of after I passed the bar in August of 1982. I had worked for a week as a lawyer in the Wake County DA's office, and I was in district court and in traffic court, and there was a person that had a speeding ticket, but he was in jail, the Wake County jail, for first-degree burglary, which back then was a mandatory life in prison. It used to be a capital case where you get that death penalty for first-degree burglary, but it was mandatory life at that time. Anyway, the guy that was charged with burglary, had a speeding ticket. So they brought him from the jail into the lockup, into the courtroom to plead guilty to the speeding ticket. And he came in, and he was about 17 years old. And back then, you could wear your own shoes. Now in the jail, they give you slippers or something. But I noticed, I looked down, he had Chuck Taylor high-top tennis shoes on, basketball shoes. And I thought at the time it was just a bait. He wasn't in handcuffs, he wasn't in leg cuffs, anything. We were just in district court on the fourth floor of the old Wake County courthouse. And I thought to myself, I said, this guy, he could run. I mean, he's in here for first-degree burglary. And sure enough, when he was standing there, he hopped over the rail, hit the back door of the courthouse, and so I was 26 at the time. So I took off running. The bailiff was a little bit older, so I took off running after him. And so he didn't know where he was up there. He was on the fourth floor, but he couldn't find the exit door. So he ran behind the elevators, and I knew he had to come out on the other side. So I kind of cut him off at the pass, and when he came around, I just kind of threw a body block on his legs and knocked him down. And then the bailiff came and jumped on top of it. And another older gentleman, too, who was at the DA's office at that time, also came and jumped on it. So they did a little story. Back then, the Raleigh Times was in existence. They did a little story about DA captures escapee or something like that. But that was 1 week after I started working and after I passed the bar at the Wake County DA's office. And that was kind of my claim to fame, that I tackled an escapee. And ever since then, it's kind of been not as exciting. But anyway, I peaked. My legal career peaked one weekend. So that's it. That's my story.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I mean, after that, like, you had to call on the career of that.
Exactly.